Hey all, Kyle A. Lohmeier, back again with another worst commentary. Due to the holidays, it's been a little while, obviously, since my last tirade, and a lot's happened. And some of those events are responsible for the festivities planned at the White House later today. See, Barry O is expected to announce some new gun control measures today for us serfs. And most of what he's expected to mandate were ideas previously debated in Congress and rejected by the people's representatives. So, Barry will just impose new restrictions on the Second Amendment by executive fiat, thereby subverting two different parts of the Constitution simultaneously. And now that is some autocratic multitasking. Way to go, sir. Now, as a statist and a collectivist, naturally, Obama's plan is to just throw a lot more money at the VATF and FBI. That's a big part of it. I've had to film and post this before the announcement, actually, because of my work schedule. So I got to speculate a bit here based on what the White House told CNN Obama was going to do. And the other big component of his plan is mandating universal background checks for all gun sales, which sounds like a great idea until you figure out what that actually means. See, when a person buys a gun from a licensed gun dealer, that gun dealer must put them through an FBI background check before they can complete the transaction. When a private individual sells a gun to somebody else, they don't have to do that. They can sell it legally to anybody who is of age and who doesn't have a disqualifying criminal conviction known to the seller. Under this new dictate, that won't be allowed anymore. A private seller will have to go with the prospective buyer to a gun shop and have the gun dealer run the buyer through a background check for a nominal fee. This seems reasonable as long as you don't really know how it works. You see, in reality, there is no federal registry of firearms, so any private seller of a gun owns a gun that nobody important knows about. And if they sell it, nobody will be any the wiser, and nobody will know who the new owner is. As such, there's really no reason imaginable that a private seller is going to go through the hassle of taking a prospective buyer to a gun shop, having them run through a check, and go from there and pay a fee. And if a seller really insists on obeying this new law and their prospective buyer knows they can't pass a background check, that buyer is just going to call someone else who doesn't have as much free time on their hands and get their gun anyway. Of course, the stated aim of this asinine declaration that will go pretty much unheeded by mostly everybody is an effort to close this mythical gun show loophole. I'm sure you've heard this term before. It's a bugbear invented by the left to frighten women and children. It came from the early 90s, the same time that the term assault weapon was coined, and it is equally meaningless. The idea that gun shows, that private owners sell guns to each other at gun shows exclusively or even more often than not, is just dumb. You see, people standing behind a table at a gun show had to rent that space from the show organizer. It's not cheap, and it amounts to a long workday of watching people come along, putting their grubby fingerprints all over your wares, and usually not buy anything. As such, the only people renting tables at the vast majority of gun shows are licensed dealers who, by law, must subject all their customers to a background check. Of course, again, this term gun show loophole comes from the early 90s. And in the early 90s, Al Gore was still busily inventing the interwebs, so there was no website called Arms List back then, which is just a giant classified ad service for people, private sellers, and some dealers buying and selling guns. Of course, when the dealers sell it, people come to their shop and have to get the background check, whereas it's business as usual for the private sellers who don't have to do that. But back in the 90s, there was a publication called Shotgun News, which had a massive, and still does, classified ad section that does the same thing as Arms List, just on ink and paper. But calling it the classified ad loophole just does not sound as scary. So basically, long story short, the thing to remember here is that nothing Barry O is going to say today will prevent even a single crime. It won't make any American one whit safer. All you'll get for his efforts is what he got last year, which was a record number of guns sold in the U.S. to private citizens. But we'll see. Depending on what he says, maybe next week we'll dig into his asininity a little deeper. I've heard rumors he might be trying to get the ban back together after 20 years, the old Clinton gun assault weapon ban. So we'll see how that goes. Until then, have fun, buy a gun from a private seller. And just before the purchase is complete, ask, hey, aren't we going to go to a gun shop and do a background check first? I mean, it's always good to share a laugh with a stranger. Till then, take care.